Kevin to bring us to our next speaker.
Thank you, Hallie. Yes, very excited to welcome Max Kaufman from the Office of Civil Legal Aid. Um, yes, it's um, the Appointed Counsel for Long-Term Care Discharges program. We know that vulnerable community members with high care needs are sometimes or often discharged into homelessness and the shelter system. Don't want to spoil too much, so Max, please take it away.
Hey, thank you, Kevin and Hallie, for making space on the agenda for this. It's good to be back. I attended one of these meetings about a year ago when I was with Team Child, and I'm glad to be here again in a different role and to, kind of build on a success story that you just heard, and share some good news about what's going on in the state, especially with long-term care. But I want to start with an image. Now, picture an 8-year-old woman with dementia. She's lived in an assisted living facility, formerly known as a boarding home, for 3 years. One morning, a piece of paper shows up on her nightstand. 30 days to leave. No explanation she can understand, no advocate, no attorney, no clear path forward. Or picture a man with disabilities who is discharged from his adult family home while he's in a hospital for a short-term procedure. When he tries to return, the door is locked, his belongings are in bags, and he has nowhere else to go. These situations are not supposed to happen if the system works the way intended. And it's for these situations the program I'm here to talk about was built for. So let me orient us real quickly. So when we talk about long-term care, in this context, we mean community-based facilities. So adult family homes, assisted living facilities, formerly known as boarding homes, and enhanced service facilities, which are last stops before hospitalization. These settings are where housing and healthcare are wrapped into one. Residents are older adults, people with disabilities, and people with complex medical needs. And in King County alone, there are 1,626 of these facilities and thousands of residents. Now, here's the gap. In Washington, if you're what the law considers an indigent tenant facing eviction, you have a right to appointed counsel, a free attorney to defend you. That protection has been transformative, and the Washington Office of Civil Legal Aid administering the right to counsel program for this has been remarkable in making that right actually mean something. But until this year, a long-term care resident facing eviction from their home, someone who stands to lose not just housing, but care, medications, daily supports, had no comparable protection. So in 2024, federal Medicaid authorities flagged that gap, essentially saying if the state protects tenants from unlawful eviction, they also need comparable protections when people are evicted from their community residential setting. The Legal Counsel for Long-Term Care program is Washington's answer to that gap. So this program launched very recently, January 5th. It's the first of its kind in the country. It's state funded, administered by the Office of Civil Legal Aid, and delivered through contracted legal providers. The intake line is run by Disability Rights Washington. And now I want to introduce Todd Carlisle, who directs that intake operation, to walk you through briefly what it actually looks like when someone calls. Todd.
Thanks, Max. Hi, everybody. My name is Todd Carlisle. I am the new program director for what Disability Rights Washington is calling the Long-Term Care Residents' Rights Program. And I am going to put the most important thing in the chat, and that is the phone number. Since January 5th, we've been handling calls on this phone line. If somebody is facing discharge or has been discharged from a community-based long-term care facility, we can provide them legal information, advice, and representation. So that is the core thing. I'll also put some information about our program in the chat. Our phone lines are open every other business day, and they're staffed by attorneys. And if you direct a client to call us, they're going to talk to a real person. And again, they're going to get information, suggestions, advice, and if they're are being discharged or have been discharged from one of the facilities that we can offer representation in, and if they're either Medicaid eligible or a Medicaid recipient, we will represent them or find representation for them. So this is as Max said, it is a big new thing. And in your programs, you're going to come across people who may have previously been in some group living situation, in a group home, in an adult family home, in an assisted living facility. You don't have to remember these facility names or the acronyms. If you think somebody might be somebody who could benefit from our services, have them give us a call. We'll figure out how we can help them. And I'm not sure if that's what you wanted, Max, but that's my pitch.
Well, thank you, Todd. That's perfect. And what I want to say to you all is you've now heard, what the program is very briefly, and you've heard essentially what it looks like on the ground and how to access it. But I want to close with, with why timing matters and what I'm asking of you. So right now, we have capacity to take more cases, especially when the referrals come in early. That will not always be true. But here's what we know is that statewide, there are roughly 200 discharges every month and more than 400 transfers from these facilities. As we've heard from community and long-term care ombuds, many of those residents end up in hospitals. Some may get stuck there without medical need and simply nowhere else to go. Others fall into homelessness systems that are not designed to serve people with complex medical needs. We've already had a caller staying at a shelter. So here's the hard truth about this population, as residents have reported, is that many residents don't call. They get notices all the time. Language and process is confusing. They fear retaliation from the facility. They think, I just don't want to make things harder. And advocates across the country say the same thing. If someone gives up before reaching out, then they've already lost. So a big part of this work is simply making sure that people know that help exists. And that's where you all come in. And so I have three asks. One, if you work with older adults or people with disabilities who are facing removal from a long-term care facility we mentioned, refer them. The phone line, online form, Todd, has put information about that in the chat. Todd and his team are ready. And two, if someone shows up at your door, your shelter, or in a hospital bed because they lost their long-term care home, contact the program. Even if the discharge had already happened, there may still be options. Three, spread the word. Share the contact information with your networks. The people who need this program the most are often the least likely to find it on their own. And importantly, this program is new, targeted, still ramping up. It'll only work if woven into the system that already exists. And that means it needs you all. Because no one should lose their home without a voice. No one should be sent to the street because the system failed to follow its own rules. And starting this year in Washington, more people won't have to face that moment alone. I want to thank you all, and if we have a few minutes, happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Max. Yes, if anybody has any questions, of course, you can put those into the chat, but feel free to come off mute and raise your hand. I've got a question, but I'm going to wait to see if anybody else would like to come off mute, raise their hand, and ask Max directly, or Todd. While folks are thinking of their questions, Max, is it okay if I share the online intake form link in the chat?
Absolutely.
Was delighted to see that there's also the intake phone number. So for folks, please make sure you copy and paste or get those written down. Oh, I see a hand raised. Yes, Darcel.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I actually run one of these facilities, and there's been some kind of confusion for me, and I don't know if it applies to this particular bill around Medicaid. So if a facility does or doesn't receive Medicaid, or if the person isn't on Medicaid, can you just tell us, is that a factor in any of this, or does that matter?
Yes, so it applies. This program is a Medicaid partnership with DSHS, so it applies to folks who are Medicaid eligible. And broadly speaking, what that means is people who are currently enrolled in Medicaid, or maybe they were just recently disenrolled, from Medicaid. They don't currently have Medicaid, but there is a path to Medicaid eligibility. So those are the contours around Medicaid. Um, there's guidance, from DSHS that about how Medicaid residency agreements and notice about this program apply. And so though DSHS would be the more, targeted source for facility context, but for this program on eligibility side, it's just looking at, are you currently on Medicaid or is there a path towards enrollment?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I just want to say there's a lot to take in, at a meeting. If you have other questions, I'll put my email in the chat too about the program structure, history, whatever. Feel free to reach out offline. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Max. And also, like Hallie had mentioned with our last guest, I'm not sure if you can stick around for long, but if you do for a couple minutes, I think just welcoming folks to put their questions in the chat. I have one question I think it might be for Todd, but you had mentioned that the intake line is open every other business day. Can I get more specific and ask which of those business days we're talking? Is it Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
Yeah, sorry, that wasn't clear. People can call us anytime, and there's also an online uh, way that people can request services. And when they call, whenever they call, they'll either talk to or they'll get a call back from one of our screeners. And then one of our screeners will schedule the person for an appointment with one of our advocates within 2 days.
Awesome.
No limitations on when folks can call. And if they don't call during business hours, we will get back to them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. And also thank you, Max. We are really, we're really encouraging folks to, ask questions. You have Max's contact is now in the chat, as well as that phone number for the intake line and the online intake form. So again, thank you both, Max from the Office of Civil Legal Aid and also Todd. Let's go ahead and welcome our next guest, Hallie. Do you want to take it away?
Sure thing. Thank you all so much. Those are really exciting and important new resources for folks who are unstably housed in long-term care. So that's a super, super important resource for folks to know about, and really glad that you are able to join us today. And we're going to move into our sort of part one of our legislative advocacy section of our agenda. Really pleased to welcome Emma Scalzo from the Balance Our Tax Code Coalition and Emily Vananek from the Budget and Policy Center, who are going to discuss some of the progressive revenue proposals that are on the table in this year's Washington State legislative session. There is some really exciting movement towards progressive revenue this year. And I think it's a really important time for us to be making progress in this direction, especially when we're facing some significant threats, both from the federal direction, like Noah talked about earlier, but also when our state budget is really we have a really significant state budget deficit. We have for many years. Last year, this caused some really significant cuts to be made to important programs that support people that you serve. And so it is about time that we get some more progressive revenue in our budget. And we will be fighting for it alongside Emma and Emily. And I'll turn it over to you to tell us more.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for having us. Again, my name is Emily Vananek. I use they, them pronouns with the Washington State Budget and Policy Center. Hallie, do you have the slides by chance? And let me know if it's wonky. We have a Canva deck and I am still getting used to Canva. So
no worries. Give me 1 second. I'm on my tiny single screen. So
you're good. Don't worry.
Here we go.
I know Emma's joining. She's on her way to Olympia for a very important meeting, so we're sending her good luck for that. But yeah, wanted to really frame this conversation as really understanding both the revenue landscape, what we can do. And it's really important for us as we dig into this to really understand how we got here and why we're here in the first place, because it'll really help shape shape this whole presentation and kind of shape your understanding of how important this is. So we'll go to the first slide. So in order for us to get like a really good grounding into like how we got here, we have to actually go back to last session. This really lays up for all of us like the moment that we're in. So we faced a historically large budget deficit. Everyone remembers this, $16 billion, really tough situation. There was a lot of people forget this, but there was a progressive package put forward, things like the wealth tax, a high salary payroll tax on employers, and other mechanisms to try to add some progressive tools to our toolbox. And then after newly elected Governor Ferguson kind of came out against the wealth tax, we saw a really mixed bag come out of that. So we can go to the next slide. So first and foremost, we saw roughly about $8 billion, $7 to $8 billion in cuts to the budget. So it came through spending reductions to agencies, cuts to healthcare, cuts to early learning programs. Cuts came in the form of delaying programs that were supposed to start. This was really, really devastating for a lot of the people that we work with. And I'm sure a lot of you felt this in various different ways. And I'll note that all of this happened before the very significant impacts from the federal government started to come in. We also saw regressive tax increases, and I'll get into kind of why this was used as a way to try to mitigate cuts. It's not something we like to see, but we saw raises to the B&O tax, which is our business and occupation tax here in Washington, as well as expansions to the sales tax on certain services, a lot of digital services. And right now we're also feeling some of the unintended consequences of some of those. Some small business owners are getting really hit hard by some of the B&O taxes in ways that were not intended, because we didn't prioritize that progressive revenue package and kind of rush through on these regressive tax increases. There actually have been some unintended consequences, and what we know is regressive tax increases just are absorbed and pinch low-income households and middle-income households the most. I do want to note there were some progressive wins. So the proven capital gains tax, things that everyone loves, was slightly expanded upwards. There was an additional tier set for capital gains that are achieved over $1 million. That was great to see. There were also increases to the state tax, which unfortunately are trying to be clawed back right now. It was really a mixed bag. And so this is really important context to lay up where we're at right now. But there's also you're kind of like, why did we get this mixed bag? Like what happened to that progressive package? And that's the next slide. A lot of corporate lobbying. So you may know that we are home to a lot of big business in Washington state. And corporate lobbying was really outweighing community needs in a really big way. We had the leaders of Microsoft really weighing in strongly against progressive proposals because it was against their best interests. We had Amazon, T-Mobile, Starbucks coming together to do quote unquote education campaigns, trying to say this was a spending issue rather than a fundamental tax code issue, which we know to be the case. And so it was really disheartening to see this flood. I mean, over $2 million in a very short amount of time coming in corporate lobbying pressure to really squash these proposals. And let's go to the next slide. And there's a significant number of challenges coming into this session. We came in with the understanding that there's yet again another deficit when Governor Ferguson put forward his supplemental budget, which is very standard practice for a governor to set forward the budget and then the legislature works through it during legislative session. He is operating from a $2.3 billion deficit over the next 2 years. We have a really, really small toolbox when it comes to progressive revenue. those two expansions to the capital gains tax and the estate tax, those are our two tools that really actually tax people who have the ability to pay. We just need to broaden our toolbox in a really big way if we're going to be able to weather these kinds of deficits in the future. The other big piece is that there's really harmful impacts that are coming from the federal government. And I know you all probably know a lot of these really well. So I won't go into a ton of depth on it. But this next slide really kind of boils down in a really big way how harmful these federal cuts are. So if we can go to the next slide. It's a very simple graph, but it really tells the story of what's happening at the federal level. HR 1, which passed last summer, effectively gutted in a big way Medicaid and really, really stripped away funding from SNAP in various different ways, whether through work requirements that are kind of push people out of eligibility, stripping funds away from states, making sure, requiring states to pay the lion's share or almost the entire share of administrative costs. And these are one-to-one to pay for tax cuts for the ultra wealthy. This is not a joke. This is the most massive transfer of wealth in United States history. If we can go to the next slide, we can actually see a little bit about who is actually benefiting from HR 1 in Washington State. You can see from this graph, people at lower incomes are seeing a very, very small amount of benefit. And there's some analysis that shows that is actually pretty much wiped out by tariff increases. And the topmost 1% is getting a 90K plus benefit. So this is what we're dealing with here in Washington. We have a very, very upside down tax code to begin with. So these wealthy folks are already getting a very special deal here. And then that just got doubled down on at the federal level. If we go to the next slide. So what do we have to do here in Washington? Because there is some really important context about why our tax code is designed the way that it is and why it pinches people with low and moderate incomes. And we have to say really, really clear-eyed that we have to work towards systems that create progressive revenue. And I'm going to get into, and I see in the chat, there's some really good information from Allison about regressive versus progressive. I'm about to get into that. So if you go to the next slide. So what is progressive versus regressive taxation? So if you look at these different really simple charts, a progressive tax is one that requires people with more and more income to pay more and more taxes. Very simple concept. Regressive taxes are the flip side of that. The smaller your income, the higher share that you're paying. And you might be thinking, I wonder where Washington is on this. If we go to the next slide, this is where we are. And this is where we have been for quite some time. We have a tax code that, because we rely on such uniform taxes, it doesn't see when you go to pay for things, whether you're making $30,000 a year or $2 million a year. That is no matter to our tax code. And as a result, the people with the lowest incomes pay the highest share of their annual income in state and local taxes, upwards of almost 14% compared to the top 1% that pays just 4%. So we have a really, really upside down tax code. And then I saw in the chat, ITEP, our really, really strong partners at the national level, ranks us as second to last. We were in last place for some time, and there was actually some really key movements that helped get us out of last place. And if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see how that maybe I didn't have it. Actually, wait for that. I buried the lead a little. I got to bury the lead a little bit. So I want to get into why we're here. So if we go to the next one. So why is it so upside down? So we have what I'll call a three-legged stool of our tax code that is a regressive three-legged stool. So we rely overwhelmingly on sales taxes, our hyper unique business tax, which is called the B&O tax. No other state has a tax like this. It effectively acts like a sales tax because it's taxed on gross receipts rather than the profit that someone gains from a business. So often when those B&O taxes increases, those taxes actually just get passed along to consumers. Our property tax also has no ability to see if your wages have increased. your property, you might feel this as a homeowner yourself or a renter yourself, as property taxes increases, it doesn't pay any attention to whether or not your wages have also increased. So we have a very, very regressive system. And it is actually a system that was established and built in the 1930s. And I wish I was kidding. The 1930s, we actually had an income tax pass here in Washington State, and it got challenged. And then the state Supreme Court at the time interpreted the Constitution to say, hey, this is we don't see this as possible. And that's when Washington passed the Washington Revenue Act of 1935, which established our current sales tax system and our B&O system that we rely on. So, and except for carve-outs for big business, that tax code has relatively remained the same. But I don't want to lose all hope, because there are some recent wins, and this is what I was about to go into before, but I kind of got ahead of myself. But we had the capital gains tax, which Kat, I love that you pointed that out in the chat, and the working families tax credit, which took us from worst in the nation to second worst in the nation. So it is possible to make progress, I promise you. If we go to this next slide, we can actually see those policies play out in real time. And actually, you can see how little the capital gains tax actually moved the needle in comparison to the working families tax credit. On the right side of the graph, you can see that capital gains tax at play, a 0.6% increase on the top 1%. That is a good start, but I'll tell you right now, we need a lot more work if we're actually going to move the needle on our tax code. And you can see how instrumental the working families tax credit was for lowering the effective tax rate for that lowest 20% and second 20%. But again, we have a lot of work to go. Our tax code is woefully upside down. And if we go to the next slide, there is momentum gaining. I'm sure you feel this. We have public opinion generally is shifting on taxes. Capital gains tax was resoundingly upheld at the ballot when it was attempted to be rescinded by a billionaire or millionaire in our state, Brian Haywood. 64.5% of the voters upheld the tax statewide. That is huge. It's across party lines. There were only 2 counties in the state that voted to not uphold the tax, which is huge. There's new bold proposals, which we'll get into, but I'm sure you've seen the millionaire's tax, and we're very excited about that. And that would be a huge shift in the right direction. It is not the be all end all. We want a tax code that is truly right side up. This gets us way closer to that. And so it is very, very exciting historic proposal. And then there's a growing movement, Balance Our Tax Code, which my colleague Emma Scalzo, who we'll talk in a little bit, she's going to go over some actions that we have for you. Let's go to the next slide. So just general high level takeaways. We have a system where everyday people continue to foot the bill. It is not sustainable. It has never been sustainable, and we are reaching a breaking point. We need to act now to set up the system for the long term. And why I say that is we don't have a system right now where we can just make little adjustments to make little progressive tax increases fix our problems. We actually don't have the infrastructure in place to do that, whereas some states have already existing tax codes where they can move different dials in certain places and realize those revenues quickly. The millionaire's tax won't come online until 2029, but it doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile to start right now, because it takes a lot of time to set up. And just know that our movement is building. Like you all are a part of this. I'm so lucky to get to work with Kevin and Hallie and so many people from this coalition. And you all are a part of this movement too. So I just want to say thank you for that. Next up, I'm going to just give you a little bit of a snapshot of where revenue proposals are right now. So if we go to this next slide, there's the big 3, I'll call them, is the 3 big revenue proposals that Balance Our Tax Code has endorsed. First and foremost, the millionaire's tax passed off of the Senate floor on Monday. This is huge, very momentous. It now shifts over to the House. But I will say and caution you all that we have a long path ahead. We have at least 1 committee, if not 2 committees to go through, and a House floor vote, and a very fractured House. So we need all of your support to try to weigh in with all of your representatives to say, we want to see this tax passed, we want to see this infrastructure set up so that we don't keep relying and balancing the budget on working people. The Well Washington Fund is another proposal. It's basically a payroll tax on employers or of people, large size companies that pay high salaries. Right now, it's currently stuck in the House Finance Committee. I would not consider this dead until sine die, which is the last day of session, March 12th. But right now, we have not seen a ton of movements with it. Wealth tax, after pushback from Governor Ferguson last year, it is very unlikely that this might be revived. It's possible, in some smaller form in the future, but I just don't see a ton of movement on this session. But there's been a lot of good work, and so hopefully we can revive this in future efforts. And then next slide. There's a really important piece of context that just came out this week, and I really want to flag it for you. There was a revenue forecast increase. And so if you are not aware of this, there is a revenue forecast council or economic and revenue forecast council that basically projects the state's funds over time. This is what tells us if we have a deficit, if we have increased revenues, et cetera, et cetera. It also factors in things like caseloads, like how are people accessing the state programs that we all love. And what we know is that state caseloads are going up. People are needing to rely on state programs more and more. And our revenues have been in steady decline. But you may be like, why is there a revenue increase right now? And in part, it's because of some of the taxes that were passed last session that are now being realized. So that's a big portion of it. But I would also really caution everyone to stay very, very grounded that this is a projection. Projections change all of the time. And when we face the $16 billion deficit, the previous projection before that was nowhere near $16 billion. In fact, I think it was close to like a very, very small reduction or an increase. Prior to this projection, 6 out of the last 8 forecasts showed downward projections. So it's just really important that if you hear this from members, make sure that we want to have a budget that's just not at the whim of these huge fluctuations. We want to see a budget that's built on a sense of, if someone has the ability to pay, they should be paying into our system accordingly. So I just wanted to share that context with you because that's actually very new, and it helps shape the information. Let's go to the next slide. I think that might be it for me, and I might be passing off to Emma. Emma, are you there?
Hey, I'm here.
Hey.
Hey, okay, well, you covered like all the important stuff, and so I'm here. Well, I guess this is equally as important, but I'm really here to just kind of tell you how you can plug in. So thank you, Emily, for such an informative overview and really kind of like where we're at right now, because really like getting into action is like this is like such a good time to really make your voice heard, especially in East King County and maybe the more wealthy enclaves of King County if you have a base there. But really what we want folks to do right now is to feel like engaged and activated. One thing you can do is join Balance Our Tax Code. We're a coalition of over 100 organizations across Washington State advocating for progressive revenue. And we're really, in the thick of it right now, but we're always adding new members and always providing new updates, especially like on a week-to-week basis over session. Another thing you can do is sign in pro for the millionaire's tax. So that is going to be heard on the House side, as Emily said. And this is scheduled for Tuesday morning. So we're also looking for folks to pack the room and really make it feel like a really engaged group and a really big, momentous opportunity for our legislature to balance Washington's tax code. So if you're near Olympia or have plans that day to be in Olympia, come stop by and we'll have scarves and stickers and it'll be a fun time. And then we're also really hoping to drive folks to sign in pro if you're not able to, because last hearing in the Senate, we got it's kind of under shady means, but they opposition signed in like 60,000 people pro, or con, which is like one of the more, I think, the largest turnout of sign-in oppositions. But we're also looking into if that's definitely bots, but like still, we can really turn it out. So hoping to really drive turnout from to sign in pro ahead of the millionaires tax hearing, and then also like as Emily mentioned, we have action items for all the other like Washington fund, wealth tax, because we know that there's more options on the table than just the millionaires tax. So another way just to kind of keep your ear to the ground on those two additional policies other than the millionaires tax is just to join our weekly updates, because that's when we share more about those. Sorry, I can't see my slides, but
We took the slides down, but I put in the chat, Emma, the sign in pro for the millionaires tax. There's the town hall, and then urging House member support.
I can put the slides back up.
And Emma, you're muted.
gosh. Okay, well, this is great. So basically, if you want to sign in pro, obviously, please do that. We also have a really great like toolkit for folks that want to advocate for the millionaires tax. We have town halls coming up this weekend. So that's this Saturday for a lot of folks. You can sign in to attend a town hall, and we can send you these talking points for like asking a question and really firming up commitment from House members. We know that it's going to be a way trickier path than in the Senate. The votes are not all there, so we really need to shore up commitment and support for millionaires tax, and also see if there's other progressive revenue options that they want to take up. So town halls are a great way to do that, and really, opposition will turn out hard for against and make the vibes generally unpleasant. So the best thing we can do is be enthusiastic and supportive and thankful to our senators for voting it out of the Senate, and our House members for taking it up when it comes over to their side. Okay, next slide. Oh, and that's it. And then there's a toolkit that I mentioned. So there's like a full toolkit full of things, like if you want to draft a letter to the editor, if you want to send a message to your lawmakers directly, it's all included there. Also, social media is a really great way to engage, because lawmakers are definitely gauging public opinion online. And so we've been really noticing attitudes been shifting as we kind of continue to bolster support online, because they can really feel it. So that's all I got. But thank you for having me.
You both so much. These are just really excellent resources and actions that people can take. I would encourage everyone to sign in pro right now. It takes about 30 seconds. And if you haven't done it before, just add your name to a public list of supporters of a bill. Just remember to use your personal email address. And don't list your organization unless you're explicitly have permission to do so. Those are really, really excellent things to know and be aware of. BOTC hosts great coalition meetings. So if folks are interested in participating in those, Emma, if you don't mind maybe dropping away for folks to get connected, or maybe Emily can do it because Emma's in the car. That is a great space to learn more and take action on progressive revenue. I think, Emily did a great job of explaining this, but the millionaires tax, if it passes, will move us in a great direction towards a more progressive tax structure. And it won't go into effect until 2029, provided that it survives a court challenge and provided that it survives the ballot. So, there are still steps that we need to take in the meantime to protect our programs and services that receive state funding while we sort of get that show on the road of moving towards a more progressive structure. So you'll definitely expect to hear more from us as the House and Senate budgets are released on Sunday. I think we're expecting them. We will definitely have an eye towards advocating for specific budget items as well. So Emma and Emily, thank you so much. I might pause for just a moment and see if folks have questions. Allison.
Oh, I can wait to see if somebody else has a question first. Thanks, Hallie.
Sure. Any other questions?
We had some good
Kat.
questions in the chat, and Kat, your hand is up.
Yeah, I would love a bit of context on what happened with the Well Washington Fund with House Bill 2100, because that seemed so promising. And of course, the revenue that it would have pulled in would be 2 years ahead of the millionaire's tax. Yeah, so do we have any insight on why it got stuck in the Finance Committee and yeah, what's going on with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's very frustrating in my opinion because, there is this need to address the short term and long term. This is my just like context of like my work, my years working in revenue space that kind of helps inform this take. But, the kind of revenue proposals that are on the table right now, are what are very, very large in nature and also like have never been considered in such a short session. So I think there's an element of um how like how many bites at the apple do you get for these large taxes, which I disagree with fundamentally, but we are working with people who are elected into office, and there's a political dynamic there. So I think there's interest in like millionaires taxes gained a lot of momentum. I personally really agree that we need to have the Well Washington Fund pass. But I think that there's a lot of internal dynamics that are making that difficult. So, and that's my own speculation. I don't have a ton of extra details there. I say it's no harm as advocates to keep pushing for it, because the last thing we want to hear is, oh, well, no one was bringing this up. Like that's the common refrain that we get from lawmakers. So I think it's very fair to say, hey, we need to see this moved. We want to see some more midterm revenue.
Yeah, and I know Rep Scott did an amazing job of reaching out to all the LDs. Like I wrote a resolution on behalf of our LD for it. He whipped up a ton of support early on. So it was just really disheartening to see it just
Yeah,
come to a standstill.
totally.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. And if not gaining momentum at these very last, I mean, I will say I've seen Herculean efforts happen within a couple of days or even a day in the legislature. So that's why I say it's not dead until Sine dies. So don't be afraid to bring it up with your members.
Thanks,
I can stay on
Emily.
for two more questions, then I do have to hop for another meeting. But
Sure thing. Let's go.
I put my contact information in the chat, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily, so much. Let's go to Stacy.
Hi. I just want to continue. I share often my concern in our neighborhoods because seniors are being economically evicted and priced out into homelessness continually. And this is corporate investors that have purchased the mobile home communities, and now they are the ones purchasing these life care centers. And it used to be, that under $2,000 that families would pay to have their families housed in these facilities, and now it's $5,000 to $8,000. It's ridiculous. On top of that, I noticed that HUD has changed the rentals for seniors from 30% AMI to 50%, which is actually workforce pricing. And so, of course, the residents are being evicted out from those as well. In our city, we have like 5 suddenly empty, units because the fixed incomes haven't kept up. It's really sad. The other thing on top of that is that SNAP for most seniors that are earning over $1,000 on their fixed income, they're only getting $24 a month. That's it. That's really harsh when the rents are increasing so drastically. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew these numbers, and that's why, it's really affecting people really hard. Thank you.
Yeah, Stacy, the stakes of getting our tax code moving in a better direction to be able to actually fund the things we need to fund and make sure that we can reduce costs for people wherever possible, whether it's like rental, housing, the stakes are very high.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Stacy. Allison, go ahead, and then I'll move us on to our legislative updates.
Well, thank you very, very much, Emily and Emma. Really excellent presentation and information. A lot to absorb. I know people want the slides, so I'm assuming that it's going to be okay to share those with folks who are interested. I just wanted to, I put this comment in the chat, but I think it's really useful, just as Stacy gave some really specific examples of what people are struggling with in terms of inadequate public service support and suppressed incomes. Um, it's really important for those who are housing and homeless service providers or people who are using or have used public services to make the connection when you're sending a message or speaking at a town hall that there are uh, real actions that we need and want lawmakers to take this budget because the millionaire tax and other progressive revenue options like the Well Washington Fund will not take effect for years. And we know that there is a $120 million risk to permanent housing across Washington state. And there is a budget request that we and others have signed on to get those funds secured in a stabilization fund, the same way as Hallie reminded everyone that we fought for in the City of Seattle budget last fall. So it's a great way to put these two things together. You don't have to do more than one sentence. But when you personalize the message through BOTC or through Poverty Action or anybody else, or when you show up at a town hall or just call or email your lawmakers, you can say, I really support this, we need it, and it's not going to change things for this year, next year, and 2027 fast enough. So we also need you to stabilize housing and ensure that they understand that you're paying attention not only to what progressive revenue possibilities are, but to the pain that people are experiencing now and need a budget to respond to. And that can sort of help to build the pressure on things like the Well Washington Fund. Again, I just really appreciate that the presentation is so detailed and acknowledges that no one fix is going to be the answer. We are in this for the long haul together. So thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you so much, Emma and Emily. I know Emily had to jump to another meeting, but thank you both so much for really fantastic efforts on the revenue front. It's really, I feel great to have you guys in this fight.
Oh, thanks so much. I will be in touch. So thanks again for having us.
Thanks so much. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some other state legislative updates beyond sort of the budget situation. We passed a really important deadline on Tuesday. That was the deadline for bills to leave their house of origin. And most of our priority bills are in really good shape. I think that's, the high level message that I'd like folks to take away from this. We sent out a message yesterday that has a lot more detail, sort of line by line on each bill and where it's at. So if I can have one of my colleagues drop the link to that message in the chat, you can find some more detail there if you're curious. I'll just give a high level update right now. Our highest priority policy bill is House Bill 2266. This is introduced by Representative Strom Peterson. We've been calling it the Housing Fairness Bill, and it would help address discrimination against permanent supportive housing, shelter, and other types of housing that we see local governments implementing like discriminatory zoning rules, special processes, and other sort of sneaky ways that have been used to discriminate against housing and shelter for people just because they have low incomes. So this bill would help to address that and would make it so local governments have to treat housing fairly when they're going through the siting and permitting process, regardless of the income of people living there. Same goes for temporary lodging, that they would have to treat the siting and permitting process for temporary lodging for wealthy people, i.e. hotels, similarly to how they would have to treat temporary lodging for low-income people, i.e. shelters. So this is a really, really, really important bill. It would pave the way for us to create more housing and shelter that we really, really need in our communities. I'll invite people to sign in pro. We have a sign in pro link that will be open until tomorrow. That's Friday at 9:30 a.m. when it has its first hearing in the Senate. So it passed off the floor of the House of Representatives. It's now headed to the Senate Housing Committee. And it's in really good shape right now. There were a handful of amendments added in order to get it the votes that it needed to pass off the floor. I've put together a little analysis of those for folks who want to join me in the weeds. You're welcome to read that. I think, I'll just share sort of the high level, which is that there were 3 amendments added, which we worked on ahead of time collaboratively with the sponsor and with our lobbyist and with other advocates to make reasonable compromises to get this bill the votes that it needed. Over the weekend, like right before the cutoff, House Republicans dropped 30 amendments on this bill, some of which were just completely ridiculous. Like one of them would have barred any shelter within 2 miles of a cannabis or liquor retailer. Like imagine a map of Seattle with 2-mile circles around any cannabis or liquor retail. Like it would cover the whole city. So that's just to illustrate like some of these amendments were really, really bad. And deals were made between lawmakers over the weekend for House Republicans to withdraw 28 of those really bad amendments in exchange for 2, in my opinion, pretty measured and pretty limited ones. So that I think was a huge victory to really constrain the amendment process and keep amendments as limited as possible to what shelter providers generally already do in the course of their business. So that I think is great news. Compromise is a necessary and normal part of the legislative process. And our goal is to really keep those compromises as minimal and as reasonable as possible in order to get the really extraordinary benefit that this bill offers. So that's where we're at with House Bill 2266. We've got, the link to the email that we sent out yesterday, as well as the link to our blog if you want to read more about the amendments made. But please do sign in pro. We're really trying to get as much support as we can for this bill as it goes through the Senate. There's also a lot of other bills that are important and still alive, and those are noted all in our email update. I do want to mention also some bills that are not proceeding forward. The first is House Bill 2489. This was Representative Mia Gregerson's Shelter Not Penalties bill that we worked on really closely with the ACLU of Washington, the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, and Columbia Legal Services. It had a great hearing in the House of Representatives Housing Committee. It was voted out of that committee successfully and on time, which is great news. And that was sort of the plan for this bill this session. So it's not a failure or a loss that it's not moving forward this year. It's just part of the process of how we're going to work this bill through the legislature. The sponsor didn't think that it would get a yes vote off the floor without some really significant compromises. So it's always better in that situation to let the bill, as we say, enter hibernation and bring it back next year And that really gives opportunity to teach lawmakers about these important issues and to work this bill through the interim to get it to a place where it can have more support without those really significant compromises. So that's why you haven't heard about that bill in a little while, and just know that that is okay and it's all to plan. There are two other bills that I'll just quickly mention that are not proceeding forward, and that is a good thing. These are bills that we were opposing, including one bill that would have made it easier for predatory lending companies to charge people more money for payday loans. So that is a bill that Poverty Action was working hard to oppose. We joined them in that effort, and that bill is dead. That was House Bill 2361. And another bill that we were opposing is also not moving forward this session. That's House Bill 2240, which would have allowed the owners of storage units to more easily confiscate and dispose of people's belongings if they didn't respond to an email on time. So that bill's also dead for this session, which is good news, and we can really shift our focus to our other priorities and to the budget. I think those are the main updates that I want to share with you. If I can have one of my colleagues drop a link to our website where we've listed our legislative priorities. And I'll also invite folks to both sign up for our Take Action emails. If you haven't been getting a bunch of emails from me over the weekend, you're probably not on our Take Action list. So you can always subscribe or update your subscription if you haven't been getting those emails. And we've been having some technical difficulties with our sign-up form. So if you have any problems, just let us know and send us an email and we'll help you figure that out. And finally, I'll invite folks to join our weekly advocates briefings. We have our power half hours, as we call them, every Tuesday at 2 on Zoom. And it's a chance to get sort of the latest scoop on what's going on in the legislature, take action together, and get other people to take action as well. And with that, I'll just wrap up by saying you can expect to hear more about sort of the state budget from us in the coming weeks as those Senate and House budget proposals come out late this weekend. So I'll go ahead and stop there and see. I see that I've gone over time, so I might invite folks to ask me questions in the chat, and I'll pass it to Kevin.
Thank you, Hallie. Yes, please, if you have questions, put them in the chat or send Hallie an email. We'll get Hallie's email in the chat as well. Moving on to community announcements, we still have some time. Very excited to welcome Peter Gieser from Benefits Law Center to share a little bit about the new overpayments clinic, the first session of which is happening March 6th at the Central Library. Peter, if you want to hop off mute and go ahead. I have the flyer here in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and post that right now.
Great. Thank y'all for having me, and thanks, Kevin, for inviting me. So as Kevin said, we have a partnership with the Seattle Public Library to do an overpayment, Social Security overpayment clinic. I'm the Director of Legal Services at Benefits Law Center, and we do specifically Social Security advocacy for folks. And what we've been seeing in the community is a lot of people have Social Security overpayments and they need help filling out forms. And we don't have enough attorneys to represent all these cases, but we have a lot of people who want to help out. So I've been recruiting law students from SU, from UW, and they're going to help us fill out forms for folks who need to appeal their Social Security overpayments. This is going to happen on March 6th at the Central Library, downtown Seattle, from 10 to 5. And so the way we're scheduling it is we're having folks, if they can, sign up to do appointments so I can kind of match them. Let's say they have language access needs. I can maybe match them with a volunteer who might be able to help them with that. Just make sure that we have the time and space. We'll have attorneys there bouncing around, looking over forms, answering questions, giving advice. and then the law students will help fill out the forms, and then we'll compile everything and send it to Social Security for them, getting things started, meeting deadlines, just getting the ball rolling, so that we can hopefully limit any sort of adverse action, and limit any harm as soon as possible. So if you have clients, if you have contact with service providers who have clients with a Social Security overpayment, and they would be interested in getting some help filling out a form, please call us at 206-686-7252 or email info@benefitslawcenter.org, and get people. And the goal is really like get a brief intake, get them scheduled for an appointment if possible. We are doing walk-ins, but we really want, any advance that we can have will help us kind of do some issue spotting, do some triage, and I can kind of do some analysis and then spend most of the time at the clinic actually filling out forms. So helping folks get scheduled, helping folks compile documents, whether that's a Social Security overpayment notice, whether that's pay stubs or bank statements or any sort of document that might be related to the overpayment, sending that to the info@benefitslawcenter.org email. That'd be really helpful. I will review them beforehand. Like I said, it'll just kind of speed up the process and make things a little smoother for clients, I suspect. And so, yeah, if anybody has those issues or you're seeing those issues in the community, please reach out to us. And also let folks know they can walk in if that's really the easiest way for them to do this. Just head to the library. It's on the 4th floor. The librarians will know where to go. There'll be signs, all that stuff. So we're really just hoping to get as many folks moving forward in the process as possible. And to answer the question in the chat, they're not like super, super common. And frankly, I have a skewed perspective because that's like 99% of my work. But I'm seeing them more and more in the last few years, post-COVID. It feels like seeing more people having issues with them and issues responding with them, issues with communicating with Social Security. So I'm just hoping that if we get forms filled out, we submit everything to Social Security on the front end, we'll see fewer issues on the back end in terms of folks needing continued assistance to protect their benefits. That's my main goal, is to keep people's Social Security benefits preserved.
Thank you, Peter, so much. Yes, I was sharing screen showing the flyer, but please click on the link that's in the chat and save that flyer and send it around to folks. Peter, I don't mean to put you on the spot with a question we didn't plan, but do you have a sense of when the next one is?
We're hoping that this will be a quarterly process, and we're hoping that it'll be something that moves around King County and Seattle more. There's interest not only with the Seattle Public Library system, but with the King County Library system. And a lot of that is going to depend on, how much need there is actually for this and how much supply of volunteers, law students, lawyers that we get. But the hope is another one maybe in June or July. That's my hope.
Awesome. And so for everyone here in this room, right, March 6th is coming up, but just keep this resource, as you all do so well in your Rolodex of resources in our community. When you hear whispers about an overpayment and the impact and the detrimental impact that it has to the folks we serve, just know that BLC has a great resource that they're developing. So again, Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. We still have a couple minutes. If anybody else has other community announcements, of course, if you have an announcement that you'd like to share in the future, please let us know. We'll save some time for you, but this is also an open space, so you are always welcome to hop off mute. A couple things to touch on. Please raise your hand. Oh, Stacy, yes.
There is an upcoming senior, those with disabilities, and veterans property tax exempt presentation at the Kenmore Library on March 12th from 1 to 3 p.m. If anybody knows any seniors that have not taken advantage of that program, let them know, please.
Sure. Stacy, do you happen to know what time?
1 to 3.
1 to 3. Okay. Thank you so much, Stacy. Again, we only have a minute here. Please raise your hand, folks, if you have something that you'd like to share. Just want to touch on our next membership meeting is happening March 19th. The link is in the chat. Oh, the Seattle Renters Survey has been extended. There's a new deadline tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. That link is in the chat. I know a lot of us are renters. I happily filled out that survey myself. But please share that far and wide in your social media. Oh, we've got a question. Please go ahead. I just saw a hand up and I think I may have lost you.
I think that's from Nadia. Go ahead.
Hi. Oh, it wasn't a question. It was an announcement. So I can wait for you to share what you were going to say.
This is the space. Go for it.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Nadia. I'm your outreach program manager from the library. And thank you, Peter, for sharing that information about the Benefits Law Center partnership. And it's that time of year tax help is happening. So I'll share a flyer. United Way of King County and AARP and the library are offering that free tax preparation services now through April 19th at 11 library locations across the city. So I'll share that information. And if y'all are like, there's like so much incredible work that's happening. And if y'all are like, I really just want to hang out at the library and crochet, like that's also happening. We're working with some great folks for our crafternoons. We have a guest curator, Amber Flame, doing this really cool series called We Belong Together, exploring the resources of delight and the healing power of connectivity and collective care. So yeah, and also AI as it relates to job searches. So as per usual, we've got a hand in many, many different pots, and I'll share those flyers out with folks and hope to see you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nadia. As you all know, we do a great recap. So if there are any flyers or resources that you felt like you may have missed, of course, I encourage you to go into the chat and click and copy and paste, but we'll send all that information out to folks as well. Allison, yes.
Thanks, Kevin. Speaking of job searches, I want to remind everybody that there is a priority deadline of this Sunday, February 22nd at noon for folks to apply for our operations and programs manager job at the coalition. Thank you so much, Hallie, for putting that link in there. So the full position description, salary range, and how to apply are at that link. And if you or someone you know is interested, please make sure to get materials in by noon on Sunday for priority consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you all for attending our meeting today. We don't want to take up too much more of your time. We are at 10:32. But yes, we will be sharing out all the links and announcements in our recap, and we will see you soon. Thank you all so much.